Hello, and welcome back to Talks Zara, the podcast where we help you speak confident, natural English in real-life situations. Today's episode is all about one of the most common and important topics in everyday conversation, talking about your job in English. Whether you're meeting someone new, attending a networking event, preparing for a job interview, or simply chatting with colleagues, knowing how to talk about your work clearly and confidently is essential. This English conversation practice episode is designed as English conversation practice, so listen carefully, repeat useful phrases, and notice how everyday professional English really sounds.
That's right, and this topic is especially useful for learners who want to improve spoken English for work, business English, and daily conversations. People often ask simple questions like, "What do you do?" or "Where do you work?" But answering them naturally can feel surprisingly difficult. Today, we'll guide you step by step through how to talk about your job in English using clear examples, realistic dialogues, and helpful vocabulary that you can actually use in real life.
We'll cover how to describe your job role, talk about your responsibilities, explain your daily routine at work, and even discuss what you like or dislike about your job. We'll also look at formal and informal ways of speaking, so you can adjust your language depending on whether you're talking to friends, colleagues, or interviewers. This English conversation practice episode is perfect for beginners, intermediate learners, and anyone who wants to sound more fluent and natural.
Exactly. And as always on Talks Zara, we'll keep the language practical, realistic, and easy to follow. So if you're learning English for work, English for interviews, or just want to improve everyday speaking skills, you're in the right place. Let's get started with the most basic and common question people ask. Part 1. Talking about your job, the basics.
One of the first questions you'll hear when meeting someone new is, "What do you do?" This question doesn't mean, "What are you doing right now?" It means, "What is your job?" or "What is your profession?" A simple and clear answer works best, especially at the beginning of a conversation.
For example, you can say, "I'm a teacher," or "I work as a software developer," or "I'm in marketing." These are short, natural answers that sound confident and fluent. You don't need to explain everything straight away. In English conversation, it's common to start simple and add more details later if the other person is interested.
Another common question is, "Where do you work?" You can answer this by naming your company, organization, or even the type of place you work in. For example, "I work for a tech company in London," or "I work at a hospital," or "I work for a small family business."
It's also very natural to combine both answers. You might say, "I'm an accountant and I work for a financial firm," or "I'm a graphic designer working for a digital agency." These combinations help the listener understand your role quickly and clearly.
Part 2. Describing your job role clearly. Once you've said what your job is, people often ask follow-up questions like, "What does that involve?" or "What do you actually do?" This is your chance to describe your job role in more detail. The key here is to keep your explanations simple and organized.
A helpful structure is to talk about your main responsibilities. For example, "I manage a team of 5 people," or "I design websites for small businesses," or "I'm responsible for customer support and client communication." Using phrases like "I'm responsible for" or "I mainly work on" makes your English sound more professional and natural.
You can also talk about the purpose of your job. For example, "My job is to help customers solve problems," or "My role focuses on improving company efficiency," or "I help students develop their English skills." These kinds of sentences are very common in professional English and job-related conversations.
If you're not sure how much detail to give, start with 1 or 2 sentences. If the other person wants to know more, they'll usually ask another question. This is how natural English conversation flows, especially in workplace and networking situations.
Part 3. Talking about your daily work routine. Another important part of talking about your job in English is describing your daily routine. People might ask, "What's a typical day like for you?" or "What do you usually do at work?" This is a great opportunity to practice present simple tense, which is commonly used to describe routines.
For example, you could say, "I usually start work at 9," or I spend most of my day answering emails and attending meetings, or I work closely with my team to meet deadlines. These sentences are simple, clear, and very natural in spoken English.
You can also talk about how your day is structured. For instance, in the morning, I focus on planning and administration, or in the afternoon, I deal with clients, or my evenings are usually spent finishing reports. This helps the listener picture your workday and keeps the conversation engaging.
If your job changes every day, you can say something like, "Every day is different," or "No 2 days are the same." These are very common phrases in English when talking about work, especially for creative and dynamic jobs.
Part 4. Talking about what you like about your job. Talking about your job isn't just about duties and responsibilities. People often ask, do you enjoy your job? Or what do you like about your work? This is where you can express opinions and feelings, which is an important part of English conversation practice.
You might say, "I really enjoy working with people," or "I like the flexibility of my job," or "I enjoy the creative side of my work." Using phrases like "I enjoy," "I like," or "what I like most" helps you sound natural and fluent.
You can also talk about job satisfaction, career growth, or work-life balance. For example, my job offers good work-life balance, or there are plenty of opportunities to learn and grow, or I feel satisfied with the work I do. These expressions are very useful in professional and casual conversations alike.
It's completely normal to be positive, but realistic. You don't need to say your job is perfect. In fact, balanced answers often sound more natural and honest in English.
Part 6. Talking about challenges at work. Sometimes conversations also include the challenges of a job. People may ask, what's the most difficult part of your job? Or what challenges do you face at work? This is another chance to practice clear and natural English.
You could say, "The most challenging part is managing deadlines," or "Dealing with difficult customers can be stressful," or "The workload can be heavy at times." These sentences are honest but professional, which is important when talking about work in English.
You can also talk about how you handle these challenges. For example, I try to stay organized, or I focus on communication, or I've learned to manage stress better. This shows confidence and problem-solving skills, which are valued in both conversations and interviews.
Remember, talking about challenges doesn't mean complaining. In English conversation, especially professional English, it's better to sound thoughtful and constructive.
Part 6. Formal versus informal ways of talking about your job. One key skill in English is knowing when to be formal and when to be informal. Talking about your job with friends is different from talking about it in an interview or meeting. Understanding this difference will help you sound more natural and appropriate.
In informal conversations, you can use relaxed language. For example, "I work in IT," or "I'm in sales," or "I've got a desk job." These expressions are common among friends and colleagues.
In more formal situations, such as job interviews, presentations, or professional meetings, it's better to be more precise. You might say, I'm currently employed as a project manager, or my role involves overseeing operations, or I have experience in client management. Being able to switch between formal and informal English is a sign of fluency. Listening to real conversations, like this English conversation practice episode, helps you develop that skill naturally.
Part 7. Talking about career goals and future plans. Another common topic when talking about your job in English is future plans. People may ask, "What are your career goals?" or "Where do you see yourself in the future?" These questions often come up in interviews or professional discussions.
You can answer by talking about learning, growth, or ambitions. For example, I'd like to develop my skills further, or I'm hoping to move into a leadership role, or I want to gain more experience in my field. These answers sound professional and mature.
You don't need to sound overly confident or vague. Honest, clear answers work best. For example, "I'm still exploring my options," or "I'm focusing on improving my current skills." These responses are natural and realistic. Using phrases like "in the future," "in the long term," or "over the next few years" helps structure your answers and makes your English sound more fluent.
Part 8. Common mistakes when talking about your job in English. Many English learners make small mistakes when talking about their jobs. One common mistake is using the wrong tense. For daily routines, the present simple tense is usually the correct choice.
Another mistake is translating directly from your native language. This can make sentences sound unnatural. Listening to authentic English conversation practice helps you learn how native speakers actually talk about work. Overcomplicating answers is also very common. Remember, simple English is often the best English. Clear, short sentences are easier to understand and sound more confident. Practice is the key. The more you talk about your job in English, the more natural it will feel. Part 10. Talking about your job in social situations.
In this part, we're going to focus on how to talk about your job in social situations. This includes casual conversations at parties, family gatherings, coffee breaks, or when meeting new people. These moments are less formal, but they're still important for building confidence in spoken English.
In social settings, people usually ask about your job to get to know you better, not to judge your skills. That's why your answers can be relaxed and friendly. When someone asks, "So, what do you do?" a short and easy response is often enough to keep the conversation flowing.
You might say, I work in finance, or I'm in education, or I work as a content writer. These answers are natural and commonly used in everyday English conversations. You don't need to explain your full job description unless the other person shows interest.
If they do show interest, they may ask, "Oh, really? What's that like?" Or, "What do you enjoy most about it?" This is where you can add a little more detail and personality to your answer.
For example, you could say, it's quite fast-paced, but I enjoy the challenge. Or, it's rewarding because I get to help people. Or, it's creative, which I really like. These phrases help you sound natural and expressive in English.
It's also common in British English to keep things modest. Instead of exaggerating, people often understate their roles. For example, "It keeps me busy," or "It pays the bills," or "I can't complain." These expressions are very common in informal UK conversations.
Using humor is also quite common. You might hear phrases like, it's not glamorous, but it does the job, or it's one of those 9 to 5 roles. These small comments make conversations feel relaxed and friendly.
Part 11. Talking about your job experience and skills.
Now let's move on to talking about your job experience and skills in English. This is especially useful for professional conversations, networking events, and job interviews. Being able to explain your experience clearly is a key part of business English.
When someone asks about your experience, they might say, "How long have you been doing this?" or "What experience do you have in this field?" These questions usually require a bit more detail.
You can start with time expressions like, I've been working in this field for 5 years, or I have over 3 years of experience, or I started my career as an intern. These phrases are very common and sound professional.
Then you can talk about your skills. For example, "I'm good at problem solving," or "I have strong communication skills," or "I specialize in data analysis." Using verbs like specialize, focus, and handle makes your English sound more confident.
It's also helpful to give examples. You could say, I manage projects from start to finish, or I work closely with clients, or I've handled international accounts. These examples help the listener understand your abilities better.
In UK professional English, it's also common to mention teamwork. Phrases like, "I work well in a team," or "I collaborate with different departments" are often used in workplace conversations.
Talking about skills doesn't mean boasting. It's about being clear and honest. Simple, confident sentences are always more effective than complicated ones.
Part 13. Talking about job changes and career transitions.
Another important topic is talking about job changes. Many people change jobs, industries, or roles, and this often comes up in conversation. Knowing how to explain this in English can make you feel much more confident.
People might ask, "Why did you leave your last job?" or "What made you change careers?" These questions are common, especially in interviews, but also in casual professional conversations.
You can answer positively by focusing on growth and learning. For example, I was looking for new challenges, or I wanted to develop new skills, or I felt it was time for a change. These answers sound professional and mature.
If you're currently between jobs, you can say, I'm currently looking for new opportunities, or I'm taking some time to upskill, or I'm exploring different options. These phrases are polite and widely accepted in English.
If you've moved to a completely different field, you might say, I decided to change careers, or I transitioned into a new industry. These expressions are very common in modern workplace English.
Career paths aren't always straight, and English conversations reflect that. Being able to talk calmly and confidently about changes shows adaptability and confidence.
Part 14. Talking about work culture and workplace environment.
Let's now talk about work culture and the workplace environment. This topic often comes up when people compare jobs or talk about their companies.
You might hear questions like, what's the work culture like? Or what's it like working there? These questions invite descriptive answers.
You can talk about the environment by saying, it's quite relaxed, or it's very fast-paced, or it's a supportive workplace. These adjectives are commonly used in English conversation about jobs.
You can also talk about management style. For example, the management is approachable, or it's quite structured, or there's a lot of independence. These phrases sound natural and professional.
In British English, people often value balance. You might hear phrases like, they respect work-life balance, or flexible working hours are encouraged. These are very popular expressions today.
Talking about work culture helps others understand whether a job suits your personality. It's also a great way to practice descriptive English.
Part 15. Talking about freelance, remote, and self-employed work.
More and more people today work remotely, freelance, or are self-employed. Talking about this type of work in English requires slightly different vocabulary.
If you're a freelancer, you can say, I'm self-employed, or I work freelance, or I work on a contract basis. These are standard expressions in professional English.
If you work remotely, you might say, I work from home, or I work remotely for an international company. These phrases have become very common in recent years.
You can also talk about flexibility by saying, I set my own schedule, or I choose my projects, or I work with clients worldwide. These expressions help describe modern work styles.
This type of work often leads to interesting conversations, especially when people are curious about how remote jobs work.
Part 15. Ending job conversations naturally.
Finally, it's important to know how to end conversations about your job politely and naturally. English conversations usually flow from one topic to another.
You might say, what about you? Or, how about your work? These simple questions help keep the conversation balanced.
You can also change the topic gently by saying, anyway, how do you know the host? Or, so what do you do in your free time? These transitions sound natural in English.
Ending conversations smoothly is just as important as starting them. It shows confidence and social awareness.